Okay, here we go. Starting off with Bitcoin, as always, I wanted to follow up on the downside targets that we've been looking at for the short, medium, and higher term timeframes based off of this sort of ongoing analysis that we've been having for the past couple, or almost, I guess it's going on like 2.5, maybe even 3 months now, starting to come to fruition on all timeframes right here. So in the short term, I do want to say that while Bitcoin did break down and basically hit pretty much around our low end target, which was in that $35,500 region, basically the top side of this blue box right here, putting on volume as well, I do expect Bitcoin to kind of put in a bit of a sideways consolidation and very likely give maybe one more try to the downside. But I wouldn't necessarily say that this is likely to break to the downside. Something like this in this case, it might trade ever so slightly lower, but I'm not calling any major continuation move down exactly from here without a short-term time frame bounce first, unless if Bitcoin closes specifically a 4-hour dildo below about 34,500 basically. I would be looking for a bit of a bounce probably over the weekend, if you will. I can definitely be wrong about that, and I'm not certainly married to those ideas. But overall, when we have a strong trading move over the general trading week, over the weekend, typically you do see a retracement of that move, both the upside and the downside, obviously. Anyways, I recognize that my camera is all sorts of fucked up, so let me just deactivate it and then activate it again, and hopefully that fixes it. It looks like it has for right now. And let's get to why else I'm kind of looking for a bounce off of this region, maybe after one more drive a little bit slightly lower or to the current lows. And that would be 1, the blue box territory right here. 2, the funding rates that we do see over here on the hourly are the lowest funding rates that we've seen actually in, when was the last time we saw a negative 0.02%? Yeah, it was actually way back on over here, in fact. The last time we saw even lower funding rates was, of course, in December. That was after the major massive drop from December 4th, which was this whole... Or let me just scroll back on over here. This whole move down. Now, obviously... Or sorry, let me actually... highlight it out. There we go. This sort of consolidation right here. So obviously things did trade lower over time, but you'll notice that things did trade sideways for a while within that range. And I think that that's probably what we do get over here for a little bit of time after this move. So ultimately, it's not, it's not a reversal signal, obviously, but it is suggesting that, the market's getting a little bit weighted to the downside right here. And probably there is going to be some, some wick stop hunts to the upside along the way. Anywhere below $38,000, though, is still heavily bearish. And I do want to follow up on some of the other things as well that we can reference over here for the short-term time frame. Starting off with the 6-hour. We see 6-hour stochastic momentum is still heavy down. This is on CME, by the way, and I believe it's still, it's pretty much in alignment with what we see on spot. So we'll just default to CME. Showing downside pressure as long as Bitcoin's below 39.6. The 4-hour is also going to be showing downside pressure as long as Bitcoin's below 39.2. The 3-hour is going to be showing downside pressure below 37. And hourly is probably flippy floppy, but up right now, if I had to guess. Yep, above about 35,900. So when I see bifurcation like this with extremes on volatility, both on the HVP of stochastic momentum, and then also, of course, on BBWP over here, I'm looking for a bit of a corrective move relatively soon. So that can, again, come with maybe one more test to the downside, but I would be looking for a bounce and a bit of sideways after that. And let's now maybe get into the higher term time frame. So yesterday, we did identify that this was, there were a lot of things kind of aligning with a bit of a trap right here. Not only was it a trap, but it did confirm hidden bearish divergence on pretty much all timeframes up to a daily. That did obviously get ticked off right there. That will have targets lower ultimately, as we've already hit all of the easy ones from that. In this case, probably looking somewhere around about $35,000, maybe within the next week. On top of that, I do want to get up to, or I do want to reference what I think the Hopium case is here. I want to be on record as saying that I don't think that the Hopium case is obviously that, or it's not that I don't think it's that likely, but I believe based off these statistics, or just based off statistics, it's not that likely, actually, just to put it quite blunt here. But if Bitcoin is going to kind of surprise everyone, which I think the majority of this market is pretty bearish right now, referencing all the data that we've seen, and certainly crypto Twitter this morning, I do think that perhaps if we are going to employ Hopium here, the most reasonable way to be looking at that would be something like this, where Bitcoin is essentially just in one massive trading range between about $44,500 to the upside versus about about $34,000 to the downside. And as long as Bitcoin's between there, we do expect probably a few more wicks down around here. But as long as Bitcoin, obviously does not break below about $34,000 on a weekly closing basis, basis, or whatever this wick low is here. Actually, it's more like 33, but I do think 34 is probably okay to use. Then I would be looking at that if Bitcoin can do something like this over the next few months as a good signal that we're probably going to see a macro low here. However, there is still no hopium to be confirmed at all whatsoever on price action until at fucking minimum, Bitcoin's back above the same area that we've been calling out for the past few weeks now, maybe even a month, which is $44,000. Above $44,000 on a respectable time frame closure, I would start to be macro bullish on Bitcoin again. Until then, risk does remain lower for all the reasons that we're about to go over. Now, in this case right here, let's go over the higher term timeframes. They suggest some continuations. All right, so here's the big bad chart that we've been following for over 2 months now, and we are starting to get resolution on this. This is the 5-day volatility versus momentum chart. We see with the next closure that we had the last closure that we had last night, there is official expansion coming off of extreme lows. Anytime that we have seen extreme lows, the expansion phase resulting from that has been on average about 45% move to the upside or the downside, being that volatility is direction neutral, obviously. And then we can use some momentum also to get a bias on direction. So this move is very likely in progress. And on average, it finds that final resting place about a little over 40 days, historically speaking, for the last couple of years here. In this case right here, you can see that all of these green vertical bars correlate with those extreme lows on 5-day BBWP. And this has been pretty damn consistent, especially in like the last year and a half right here, as you can see. And in this case, we do see expansion coming in yet again. And for what it's worth, if we were to forecast what a 45% move looks like to the upside or the downside from that expansion, well, that would be about $60,000 to the upside. I think that's quite unlikely for right now, especially as long as you're below about 45,000, and to the downside somewhere around about $24,000 to $25,000. To take that one step further, we just got another closure last night for the 5 days. So this is all fresh now. And not only did we play out a trendline regression rejection test in early April that we identified right here, which started to really gear the probabilities towards downside from that last like $48,000 high or so. But we're seeing it continue with downside momentum, obviously. And that will be consistent as long as Bitcoin is trading below basically $42,000 right here. So you will notice that if you watched any video in like the last couple weeks here, that the number needed for Bitcoin to close above in order to switch back on 5-day stochastic momentum to the upside has actually drastically lowered here, which is kind of a good sign if you want a bit of a consolation prize for the BULAs. But obviously, $42,000 is quite far away. In fact, the same distance from where Bitcoin was trading at yesterday, about 38 to 39, to where the prior number was, which was like 44 or 45, obviously. So, it does need to be taken into context, obviously. But in this case, not only are we seeing downside momentum continue, we're also seeing the 5-day stochastic momentum getting into the bearish control zone for the first time since December of 2021 on that last catastrophic fall. So ultimately, this would suggest, especially seeing as we are seeing official expansion right here, that we probably do see within the next month or a little bit over a month, within the next 40 days or so, that move occur. And for what it's worth, history says, or historically speaking, statistically speaking, $25,000 is kind of the general target from that. That is also in alignment with what we do see over here. Oops, excuse me. On the monthly chart. The monthly MACD chart, which I'll just run through this very, very quickly here. Anyways, monthly MACD crossing the downside. We've seen this 3 times in Bitcoin's history, besides the one that we just saw in January to February of this past year. And that signal combined with PMRP getting below the moving average, but also, and most importantly, price action closing below the white 20 simple moving average right here on the monthly has led to each and every time at minimum a test down to the green moving average, which is a 55 exponential. You can see the same thing happening over here. The green vertical bar represents the monthly MACD crossing the downside. Plus, obviously, this red circle represents, monthly not crossing, but closing below the 20 simple. That's when price action was kind of catalyzed towards the ultimate lows. You'll notice that it took, almost like half a year to a year after that for Bitcoin to get going again and reaccumulate. And then it does the same thing in 2018 right here. Again, same thing. Monthly MACD crossing the downside, closed ever so slightly below, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 months finds the lows, another few months, and up and at them again. Obviously got the Rona dump right here. This one kind of happened relatively, or very, very fast to be fair. And we got the same thing happening over here. So this is kind of why I've been having this general bias that, hey, as long as Bitcoin's especially below that white 20 simple, this signal is activated alongside the 5-day chart that we just looked at, and risk does remain lower. Again, I think that the hopium here is that Bitcoin maybe puts in a few wicks down to the low 30s, and then bounces heavily back up, you know, midsummer here. And then we see a move back above about 44,000 bucks. To see something like that, I would be very much macro bullish, very likely to see the prior all-time highs again after that, like, you know, months after that probably. But at that point, I'd be macro bullish and just generally looking up and to the right. Until that happens, though, risk does remain lower as far as I'm concerned. And understand that there's going to be bounces along the way. So, you know, if we go back into here on the medium and higher term timeframes, you'll notice for the 12-hour, stochastic momentum will actually turn back up above 36,250, and daily will also turn up above 37. So if Bitcoin can start to close above these regions, especially leading to the weekend, I would be looking for a weekend bounce. Bounces can come up anywhere towards, you know, 38 to 39,000 bucks and not really do all that much. So I think that's a good place to leave off on this analysis. I hope that was in some way helpful. Should probably shill the Instagram or just let you know on Instagram that there's a bunch of scammers there. Please be aware that I'm never going to message you to trade some sort of secret fund. I don't have them, nor do I care to. And also, if you want my actual Instagram account, it's in the link description below. Any other Instagram account is not me and very likely a scammer. And then also Bybit, got the old Bybit shill. Don't fucking trade on leverage unless you actually have a working strategy. As always, the reason why they give you a big deposit bonus of like 3,000 or 4,000 bucks is simply because they want you to get, you know, they want to give the cocaine addicts a bit of cocaine to get them hooked. Obviously, you know, they're a business, so do be aware of that. At the same point, you know, if you do actually have a working strategy, that is the exchange that I think is probably best for leverage right now, simply because they have the liquidity. Anyways, yep, that's it for today. Hope that serves you well, and take care.